The shed wasn't much to look at. A stubborn thing leaning against the wind like an old man braced for another blow. Its boards bore mismatched colors, some darker, patched in like scar tissue after hard winters. Snow slid off the slanted tin roof with a hushed weight, barely a whisper as it landed. Beside the shed stood a woman in a threadbare gray shawl, her left boot sinking slightly deeper with each slow step as she favored a limp that hadn't ever quite healed. Mabel Thorne, the name still carried weight in town, often spoken with slanted heads and voices softened out of habit, as if people feared waking whatever sorrowful spirit might still keep her company out on that stretch of forgotten land. The world around her was still bone deep still except for the creek that murmured beneath its sheet of ice beyond the bare cottonwoods. Then came the knock. It wasn't loud, not enough to rattle, but just firm enough to break the silence. Mabel's fingers curled tighter around the edge of the doorframe. She stood unmoving, letting the cold slip through the cracks and bite at the thin spaces beneath her shawl. Another knock, and then a voice small, strained, like a bird trying to sing with frost in its throat. "Ma'am, my pa said you had a shed." When Mabel opened the door, the cold swept in first, sharp and full of old memories. Standing in its wake was a little girl, no older than 6. Bundled in a worn cloak stitched with uneven lines and clumsy thread. Her cheeks were flushed and raw from the cold, nose smudged with grime and wineburn, and in her arms she clutched a limp calico kitten wrapped in a stocking cap. Behind her stood a manna cowboy by the look of him, though not the kind that boasted or filled a room with swagger. He wasn't tall in the loud way, but tall in the quiet kind that made others hush when he entered. His hat was coated in dust, snow clung to his shoulders, and the lines in his boots mirrored the weariness in his eyes. His coat hung loosely around a lean frame, and though he carried no visible weapon, there was something about him, something in the way he stood like a man, shaped by winters colder than this one. "We don't need much," he said, voice even and low. "Just a dry corner for her to sleep in." Mabel's gaze moved from the man to the girl, then back again. Her fingers twitched beneath the shawl. "I got nothing but that shed," she said. He nodded, like even that was more than he'd dared hope for. She stepped aside and motioned toward the crooked little structure behind the house. The girl dipped her head in thanks, holding the kitten close like it held her breath. They walked without words, boots whispering against the snow. Mabel stood on the porch and watched them go, her breath misting in the air. The man never looked back. That night, through a narrow part in the curtain, she watched them. A weak flicker of oil light glowed inside the shed, casting long, uncertain shadows, the flame trembling like it didn't trust the wick. The girl lay curled under a worn blanket while the man knelt beside her, brushing snow from her hair with careful fingers. His voice rose soft, though the words never carried far enough for Mabel to catch. Then, without prompting, he picked a twig from the kindling pile and made it dance like a puppet over the girl's face. Her laughter rang out quiet, uncertain, but real. Mabel felt something ache in her chest, deep in a place that had not stirred since her sister's child died so many winters ago. She closed the curtain gently. Morning came reluctant and late. Snow piled thick on fence posts and the bare arms of trees. Mabel stepped into her boots and limped through the frost to the shed. She left a steaming bowl of cornmeal and butter on the crate just outside the door, then turned and walked away without a word. When she returned at dusk, the bowl was gone. In its place sat a note, folded into the shape of a bird plane, but made with care. She didn't open it. Over the next few days, changes crept in softly. The pump handle no longer stuck. The latch on the chicken coop, broken for over a year, had been mended. Her father's rocking chair, left split and stiff since the fire, now moved smooth and easy on the back porch. No one spoke of it. Then came the girl, Rosie. She called herself, knees smudged with dirt as she knelt by the garden bed. "Can I help you grow things?" she asked, gripping a broken trowel like a knight with a sword. "We can work for our stay." Mabel looked at the small hands clenched around that trowel. Behind her, the man stood silent near the fence, watching, not intervening, just present. "You ever plant onions?" Mabel asked. Rosie shook her head. "Then you best learn." From that day on, Rosie became a small fixture in the mornings watering the winter greens, whispering to her kitten as if it could understand every word. Mabel never invited the man inside, but some evenings she left bread on the crate. It was always gone by morning. The town began to buzz, as towns do. Sadie Bell claimed she'd seen the cowboy near the mercantile, and by dusk the story had grown wings. That limping Thorne woman's got herself a man, someone muttered. He's sleeping in her shed. Mabel heard it at the feed store. She didn't flinch, just paid for her oats and walked out slower than usual. That night, she scrubbed her already clean counters until her wrists ached. The past had a long shadow, and it dragged behind her like chains. The man had never touched her gate, had asked for nothing, never once stepped onto her porch without cause, and still, they talked. One morning, she found Rosie asleep by the chicken pen, arms around the kitten, her smile soft and unguarded in sleep. Mabel bent down, brushed a strand of hair from the girl's brow. "This place smells like pancakes," Rosie mumbled, still dreaming. Mabel's throat tightened. The house hadn't smelled like pancakes since her father passed. That night, the shed flickered with warmth again. Inside, Josiah, though Mabel still didn't know his name, sat beside the girl, hands open, elbows resting on his knees, not in defeat, but in patience, like a man who had learned the cost of holding on too tightly. She watched his fire-lit profile through the curtain, his weather-worn features gentle in the glow. This time, when she drew the curtain, she did it tenderly. Snow fell again that night, soft, unhurried, as though the sky had grown weary of cruelty. The next morning, Sadie Bell appeared at the gate, her smile too wide and her coat a plum color she wore only when trying to look like more than she was. "You got company, Mabel?" she asked, voice laced with mock concern. "Town says you're nesting a drifter." Mabel didn't answer. "Thought you'd sworn off men after the Harrow boy," Sadie continued. "Didn't think you'd taken another wanderer, especially not with a mouth to feed." Mabel stepped forward, her limp pronounced when she was angry. "He didn't ask," she said, "and I didn't offer. That girl needed shelter." For a fleeting moment, something flickered behind Sadie's face, something human. "That's kind," she said softly. "But kindness gets women like us hurt, Mabel." With that, she turned and left. That night, Mabel sat on her porch with tea gone cold. Rosie wandered out barefoot, holding the ribbon Mabel had left on her pillow, a faded pink scrap from years past. "Was this yours?" Mabel nodded. "My little sister's." Rosie tied it in her hair. "I look like someone who belongs here now." The words hit deep. Mabel nodded, lips pressed tight. The girl leaned into her side. "Thank you for the warm," she whispered. "We don't get much warm." Mabel didn't move. Inside the shed, Josiah plucked a tune from a stretch of twine, pulled taut across wood. A lullaby made from nothing, but strong enough to hold. She still didn't know his name, didn't ask. But as the wind circled the house and the moon hung low, she realized something. For the first time in years, she didn't feel alone in her silence. The paper bird still sat on her table. This time, she opened it. Inside, for kindness without asking, for warmth without name, her hands trembled. She didn't know why. She turned off the lamp and left the door unlocked. By morning, her rocking chair had been moved into a sliver of sunlight, sanded smooth, freshly oiled. It swayed gently, as if someone had just risen from it. Rosie danced through the frost with a twig in hand. "I think your chair is magic," she said. "Papa fixed it, said some things deserve to rock again." Mabel didn't answer, but her eyes glinted. The words had found their place. That night, she brought out cornbread, not just for Rosie. The firelight spilled onto the snow from the shed like something sacred. Mabel paused, uncertain. Then, without knocking, she left the bread on the crate. A footstep in straw made her pause. "I never asked your name," she said, still facing away. The reply came low. "Josiah." "Mabel, thank you," he said, "for not asking more than a name." She nodded once and walked back through. The cold days passed. The snow softened. The kitten now slept in the kitchen. Mabel pretended not to notice the tiny paw prints in the straw. Then came Sadie again, tight-faced, dressed to impress. "Just bringing flour," she said, setting it down like charity. "You've got mouths to feed now." Mabel said nothing. He's decent to look at, Sadie continued, but too quiet. Traveling with a child, no ring, no luggage, doesn't sit right. Maybe he came looking for something better. Sadie tilted her head. Kindness gets mistaken for invitation. Be careful. That night, Mabel bolted the door. The next morning, Rosie came in clutching a pine sprig. Mama said this helped Papa breathe when he was tired. Mabel placed it in a chipped jar. It looked small and brave on the sill, like hope. Remembered, Josiah kept mending things without thanks. She kept cooking extra soup. They didn't call it love, but it was something real, thawing slow and steady. When a storm crashed open the shed's window, Mabel went with lantern in hand. Rosie was cold. Josiah stood shirtless, protecting her. You can't keep her out here, Mabel said. He hesitated, but followed. Inside, Rosie fell asleep beside the fire. Josiah sat by the door. You're not taking. Mabel told him. He didn't drink his tea, but he stayed. They talked a little. The scars on his hands were from life, not war. She asked why he returned. She needed quiet, and I needed somewhere folks wouldn't ask who I used to be. Then we're both in the right place. He watched Rosie sleep. She remembers her mama more than I do. I try not to erase what I can't give. Later, he slept on a mat beside Rosie. Mabel stared at the ceiling, hearing 3 breaths instead of 1. Rosie made her laugh. It startled them both. You don't laugh much, Rosie said. But you could change that. Mabel blinked. Change what? Your weather. Later, Josiah handed her a box of lures. Figured they shouldn't rot. They belonged to someone who never stayed long, she replied. Maybe they'll do better now. Whispers stirred in town, rumors of a new mayor. Mabel watched Josiah move like a man who once commanded, but no longer wanted to. One rainy day, Sadie returned. Your cowboy's asking questions, she said. To polite. You know what that means. Mabel crossed her arms. He might be here for something. Land. Office. You don't know his past. Maybe he's trying to start over. Men don't start over. They circle back. That night, Rosie said they'd move back to the shed. Josiah was fixing the roof. Mabel found him there. You're leaving. Didn't want to be a burden. You're not staying either. Someone will recognize me. Then I won't be Josiah anymore. Who will you be? He looked up. Someone the governor trusted to fix a town. She froze. Snow fell soft outside. She walked toward town, unsure what fire she'd lit. The shed breathed now. It smelled of pine, smoke, and slow salvation. It was no longer just a shelter. Rosie hummed as she worked, half lullabies, half new songs. Mabel let her. One afternoon, she found Josiah behind the shed, mending something. You ever fix something and still feel like it's breaking? Only everything that's ever mattered. He handed her a small carved frame. A photograph curled at the edges. Him, a woman, with strong eyes and a baby Rosie holding a flower. She passed. Childbirth. I wasn't there. He turned the frame in his hands. Helping others never filled the space she left. Mabel didn't offer comfort, just sat with him as the light shifted. That night, Rosie asked to sleep inside. Mabel smiled. Then we'll make you a pallet. Rosie curled beside the hearth, kitten tucked gently under her chin, her small form wrapped in sleep. Mabel stepped quietly from the corner, bringing out an old quilt softened by time, laying it gently over the child. She hums now, Mabel whispered. Josiah nodded, eyes resting on Rosie. She hasn't hummed since Missouri. They stood together in silence, watching her breathe, the firelight dancing on her hair. Outside, the wind swept across the tall grass, moving slowly as if it didn't wish to wake anyone. When Josiah turned to leave, Mabel reached out and touched his arm. You don't have to go back to the shed tonight. He paused. That's kind, but I still feel like a guest. Guests knock, she said. You built my gate. He left, and she stayed watching, eyes tracing his shape until the shadows finally swallowed him. The town stirred in the following days, whispers blooming like frost under doorways. The governor's representative was arriving by rail in a week, and speculation bloomed. New taxes, some muttered. A sheriff swap. Maybe Mayor Crowder finally stepping down. Mabel heard it all at the dry goods store, eyes down as she counted coins for flour. But But her ears never stopped listening. The name Boone hadn't been spoken. Not yet. On her walk home, she passed by the churchyard. There, Rosie sat humming softly beside a carved wooden bench, her gaze far away. The preacher's wife, Calamity, a plump woman with kind eyes worn weary, watched from a few steps away. "That your little one now?" Calamity asked gently, her voice dipped in careful kindness. "She's not mine," Mabel replied, "but she stays with me." Calamity nodded, eyes lingering on Rosie. "She's sweet. Looks like she's been brushed off and set upright again." "She's doing the same to me," Mabel whispered. Calamity's face softened further. "We all need saving in slow ways." When Mabel returned home, she found Josiah outside, staring at the sky, not watching for weather, just watching. "Do you miss who you were?" she asked. He didn't flinch. "I miss not needing to lie about it." She stepped beside him. "Who were you, Josiah?" He drew a long breath. A man people listened to when they were desperate, and then resented once things were fixed. "That sounds like a mayor." His silence was heavier than any confirmation. That evening, Mabel set a second place at her table. Josiah sat with a stiff spine, uncertain, but Rosie chattered through dinner trees, kittens, and how pancakes should be shaped like boots. Mabel smiled more than she realized. Josiah relaxed, his shoulders softening with every bite. After Rosie went to bed, he stayed by the fire. "She asked me last week if you were going to be her new mama," he said. Mabel's hand froze. Mid-stitch, "I told her you're just someone good who opened a door." "I didn't know I had," Mabel murmured. Josiah leaned forward, elbows on knees. "You ever think broken folks are drawn to one another?" "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe we just recognize the same storm when we see it." The next day, Sadie returned. She didn't speak, just stood by the gate, watching Rosie stroke the kitten under the weak sun, then turned and left. That evening, Rosie cut her palm on the edge of the woodpile. Mabel ran, heart hammering. Josiah lifted the child gently, cradling her like spun glass. Rosie didn't cry, but when Mabel dabbed the cut with warm water, she whispered, "I didn't want to leave a mark on your house." Mabel stilled. "You haven't," she said. "You've only made it warmer." That night, Mabel lay awake long after the lamp had gone dark, Rosie's words echoing. The girl had feared leaving a mark, but she had all over. So had Josiah. Later that week, Mabel found a letter tucked in her mailbox, no stamp, a red wax seal, addressed to Mayor Josiah Boone. Her breath caught in her throat, hands trembling. She walked to the shed and found him shirtless again, splitting logs with deliberate calm. "This came for you," she said, holding the letter. He didn't take it, just stared. "You knew." "I guessed," she said. "I didn't need to know until now. I wasn't hiding." He murmured, "Just delaying. That's something I understand." Finally, he took the letter but didn't open it. Instead, he looked at her. "When I first came, I thought this place would be a stop, a quiet corner to catch my breath. But now it's where I remember what breathing feels like." She turned to go, but he stopped her with a question. "If I had told you the truth from the start, would you have opened the door?" She didn't answer, just kept walking. But that night, she left the lamp on a little longer and unlocked the door again. This time, he knocked. The first flakes of late winter fell like ash from a sky gone still. The crooked sign at the edge of town, "Welcome to Windmere," shivered beneath the weight of cold and rumors. The governor's carriage was due any moment. Folks wore their best clothes on a Tuesday, armor of fabric and starch. Mabel stood on the rise near her fence, arms folded under her shawl, breath coming in pale clouds. Down near the tracks, Sadie Bell collected names, calculating who might be sheriff or postmaster. She'd asked Mabel days ago if Josiah was staying. Mabel had only said, "As long as he needs." Rosie didn't seem to feel the tension. She painted the porch railing with water and a stick, pretending to be decorating. A great house. Josiah watched her, wearing his quiet reverence like a second coat, not protective, just present. The letter lay unopened on the nightstand in the shed. He hadn't spoken of it. That afternoon, Josiah walked into town alone, no saddle, just boots, worn thin and shoulders squared, like a man bracing for loss. Mabel stayed behind with Rosie, pruning dead ivy from the porch, her hands bloodied by thorns, but never flinching. In the courthouse, Benjamin Crowder still sat in the mayor's chair, like it was his by birthright, his pride built from newspaper clippings and denial. "Well now," Crowder said, not rising. "Didn't expect a drifter to come knocking. Or maybe you ain't a drifter after all." Josiah said nothing. Word got out. "Boone's the name in the letter, and here you are. No ribbon, no speech. Just rolled in like you were selling fence posts." "I didn't come to make noise," Josiah replied. "That's the trouble. Quiet men scare the hell out of people." Josiah looked around the nearly empty room. No one's scared. "They're waiting." Crowder laughed dryly. "You think they want you? You've been shacked up with a shed widow in her patchy garden. You think that makes you one of them. I didn't come here to be liked." "Then why?" "To learn how to belong again." That evening, he returned home, coat dusty and eyes silent. Mabel met him at the gate. She didn't ask what happened, just handed him a cloth to wipe his hands. "They know now," he said. "I figured they would." Their eyes met, not fear between them, something softer, an ache that came before rain. That night, Rosie had a nightmare. Mabel woke to soft crying and the sound of bare feet. Rosie clutched her quilt, eyes wide with lingering fear. She was gone. The child whispered, "Mama and Papa couldn't find me. I was small, and the wind was too loud." Mabel pulled her close. "It was just a dream. She died while I slept," Rosie said. "I was dreaming then, too." Mabel said nothing, just rocked her until her breath slowed. In the morning, Josiah found them curled together on the parlor settee. He sat beside the cold hearth, saying nothing. Later, he took Rosie into town for apples. Mabel stayed behind. She couldn't yet face the way people might look at her now. She did laundry, but her mind wandered to Josiah, to the steadiness in his silence, to the man who had once slept in her shed and now stood between her and a life she hadn't dared to hope for. By midday, Sadie came by again. She didn't knock, just leaned on the gate, chewing licorice. "Heard the governor's man is today's out," she said. "You ready to be the mayor's mistress?" Mabel didn't blink. "I'm not anyone's anything." "Could have fooled me," Sadie scoffed. "He's got your porch fixed, your barn swept, and your heart sitting where folks can see it. He's done what decent men do. Decent men don't hide who they are. Decent women don't twist kindness into something cheap." Sadie blinked, stunned. "Well," she muttered, "we'll see what the town thinks when he stands up on that platform." Josiah returned with Rosie and an extra apple bruised, dented, but offered with quiet care. Mabel accepted it, turned it over in her hand, then placed it in the bowl like it belonged. That evening, he stood watching the sky. She joined him. "Do you regret coming?" she asked. "Not anymore. You could have told me," he said. "I looked at you like someone trying to stay warm," she replied. "That hasn't changed." The next day, Windmere prepared the platform. Crowder strutted like he still held power. The town didn't correct him. Not yet. But eyes found Josiah more often. Rosie sensed it. She stayed close to Mabel, whispering, "Will they take him away?" "No," Mabel answered. "But he might have to go all the same." That night, Josiah sat with the letter, the seal now broken. The order read, "Take office in 3 days or forfeit the appointment." "I never came here to lead," he said. "You came to heal," Mabel said. "I don't know if I can do both." "You already are." The morning air was sharp as broken glass. Windmere gathered. No parade, just quiet purpose. Josiah stepped forward. No badge, just boots and humility. "I wasn't born here," he began. "Didn't marry into your families. But I've stood by your fences, bought your apples, and watched how this town lets go of people too soon." Then Mabel stepped forward, uninvited. "The man who stayed in my shed fixed more than wood," she said. "He showed me that a quiet start can still lead to something good." Crowder sputtered. "You're nothing but a guest." "No," Josiah said. "I'm home." The crowd clapped, hesitant at first, then swelling like a spring thaw. As they stepped off the platform, he whispered, "Will you stay if I stay?" Mabel looked at Rosie, then the snow-draped shed. "I already did." That night, as 3 shadows moved behind the windows, a second letter arrived. This one bore Windmere's seal. The town stirred, unsure whether to step forward or pull the curtains tighter. Mabel watched the road from her window. Shawl wrapped tight, The morning air filled with the sound of goodbye. Josiah was out back, splitting, kindling with the steady strikes of a man deciding. They asked again, he said. They want you in the mayor's house, she replied. They want a symbol. And you? I want a place where I don't have to perform. And the shed? She asked. It's not about the shed. It's the fact I found something here I never planned to look for. A second chance. And now you're afraid it'll vanish if you claim it. I don't know how to be both leader and man, father and mayor. Then don't try to be everything. She said, just be honest. That night, in the crowded hall, he said, if you want someone who listens, who fixed fences, and helped a child home again, I'll stay. No applause. Then Rosie stepped forward. He's a good papa. One by one, voices followed stories of kindness. The judge asked, is that your answer? Josiah looked at Mabel. She nodded. Double quotes, yes, he said. I'll stay. Snow fell soft as forgiveness. At the house, Mabel lit the lamp. You can come in now, she said. I'd like to, not just for tonight. Then unpack, she whispered. The shed's for ghosts. The house has room for the living. Later, Josiah sat near the fire, coat off, warmth blooming slow. This feels like the first door that opened without a price. Mabel handed him tea. Then don't close it. Outside, snow covered the shed. Inside, 3 steady hearts beat. Home, after all, wasn't a place. It was hands that opened the door and a quiet voice that said, stay.